I'm standing next to the very busy intersection of Cambridge Park Drive and Alewife Brook Parkway in North Cambridge. Alewife Station is right behind me, which means that it's time for the second installation of this series, where we explore the facts, features, and secrets of Boston's Red Line. The Red Line was originally constructed in the years leading up to 1912 as the Cambridge Tunnel, which was intended as a quick link between downtown and the major hub of Harvard Square. The line opened with stops at Park Street, Kendall Square, now Kendall MIT, Central Square, and Harvard Square. Charles, now Charles MGH, would be added a few years later. The line also introduced a brand new maintenance facility at Elliott Yard. Later extensions eventually brought the line all the way through central Boston, connecting to all the other subway lines except for the Blue Line, as well as all commuter rail and intercity trains departing from South Station, making its way to Alewife in the north, and Ashmont as well as Braintree in the south. The line is also notable for having numerous suburban sections and tunnels, a stark contrast to the other lines which are largely above ground outside of downtown. Alewife is one of those stations along with Porter and Davis designed in a brutalist fashion, with spacious underground concourses and platforms. The station includes a massive parking garage and bus terminal, but if you come to the other side of the platform, you will see a much smaller, lesser used entrance. This is the Russell Field entrance, which connects to a bike path and some fields leading to the North Cambridge neighborhood. There's also a small pond just through this fence. This stop is Davis Square, which is a very dark and not very well cared for station, but aside from some slightly more colorful public art and tiles, this was the site of the West Somerville station on the now abandoned Bedford commuter rail line. We've made it to Porter Square, the final station built with the Alewife extension in the 80s, and possibly the most impressive of those three. The station is split level, with inbound trains boarding here and outbound trains boarding downstairs. This station is also by far the deepest subway station on the MBTA, playing host to the longest escalator on the system. Also, along the escalator, you can see sculptures of gloves, meant to represent the gloves of construction workers. If you look up, you can see depictions of pigeons, which you can occasionally find in the station. And if you look down, you can see depictions of trains. The station is also a connection point to the Fitchburg line of the commuter rail, with a small passageway leading from the platforms. Additionally, if you look up, there are windows where you can see a commuter rail train passing through on the tracks above. The station is also home to a unique head house made of glass with a dynamic sculpture. The next station is Harvard Square, one of the most unique stations on the network, for a number of reasons. This was also one of the initial termination points of the line. Kind of, more on that later. But something that makes Harvard even more unique is the bus tunnel. The bus tunnel is also split level and plays host to 8 bus lines, some of which were trolley buses up until a few years ago. Earlier, I mentioned that this was not the original Harvard station. It was just the most recent rebuild. The lines in and around Harvard Square have had a complex and storied history that we don't have time for in this video. But if you leave Harvard on an inbound train and look out the left side of the train, you will see the abandoned Harvard station. The next 2 stations are Central Square and Kendall MIT, which are both simple side platform stations. But it is worth noting that Central Square is home to tiled signs with the word Central, and the recently rebuilt entrances at Kendall MIT. Between Cambridge and Boston, the tracks cross over the Longfellow Bridge, which gives not only one of the best views of the city from a train, but from anywhere due to its elevated location. At Charles MGH, an elevated station, one of only a handful on the Red Line, the station is located in the middle of Charles Circle. The station is also the point where tracks dip below ground underneath Beacon Hill. The next station is Park Street, where
the doors will open on both sides of the train. For elevator service, please exit the left side of the train onto the center platform.
Park Street is one of only a handful of stations to have platforms on both sides of the train. The Red Line platforms here have a vaulted ceiling, which makes the otherwise cramped subway station feel much more spacious. Also, if you come down to the end of the center platform, there's a gap in the station wall, where you can look down through the tunnels. This station is also the interchange point with the Green Line, which was the original part of the station, and one of the first subway stations in the United States, but that's a story for another time. Downtown Crossing Station, in the heart of downtown, as the name implies, was not always called Downtown Crossing. Red Line platforms used to be called Washington Station, while the two Orange Line platforms were called Summer-Winter. But the naming system proved too impractical, being changed to just Washington in 1967, and Downtown Crossing 20 years later in 1987. To change between the red and orange lines, you have to come to the far northern end of the station, where two passages lead underneath the Orange Line tracks. South Station is the next stop, another relatively basic station where you can connect to the Silver Line bus, and of course all the trains which depart from the main rail terminal at Boston South Station, with an excellent connection to the subway. South Station, like Central Square, has a tiled sign saying South Station Under, and it's also worth noting the super intuitive transfer to the Silver Line, which is just up the stairs. Now we're at Broadway Station, an island platform, and possibly one of the most New York City-esque stations in Boston. But if you come down to the end of the platform, like Park Street, you can see right down the tunnels. Passing through Andrew, which is a very simple station with connections to another bus terminal, the trains soon surface, with our first above-ground station past downtown being JFK UMass. JFK UMass is a unique station on the Red Line because it features 4 tracks, one pair for the Ashmont branch and another for the Braintree branch. However, the branches, despite what the map shows, don't actually split here. To explain, we need to go one stop further, to Savin Hill. We're at Savin Hill Station, an island platform next to a highway, with a very modest entrance, one of only a few to not feature a T sign. And you will notice that there are 2 tracks here through the platform, but there are also 3 tracks further over. There are 3 commuter rail lines which run alongside the Red Line here, but 2 of those tracks are actually for the Braintree branch. Despite serving 3 lines and the seasonal Cape Flyer service, there's only one single commuter rail track, a significant bottleneck preventing much-needed service expansions. There's been talk about shifting the Braintree trains onto the Ashmont branch tracks here, but nothing has happened as of yet. The physical junction of the branches sits just north of JFK UMass, but the right-of-way splits just past Savin Hill, an interesting quirk which might contribute to Savin Hill's status as the least used station on the Red Line. The next station, Fields Corner, is a recently rebuilt elevated station, with side platforms being otherwise pretty normal. But the next station takes us back below ground to Shaman, which has beige platform tiles and an unassuming low-rise headhouse, a stark contrast to the modern Fields Corner, and our next stop, Ashmont, the final stop of the Ashmont branch, with a large station building and bus interchange. This is where the train emerges from its tunnel, and is also the location of one of the Red Line's 2 major yards, Codman Yard. But there's still more to cover with the Braintree branch. Passing through North Quincy, we arrive at the second station on the Braintree branch, Wollaston. Wollaston was rebuilt very recently to comply with accessibility standards set by the ADA, being the only remaining inaccessible station on the Red Line at the time. While there is nothing too notable about the station, it does feature a unique faregate design not seen anywhere else. Quincy Center, another interchange with commuter rail, is an underground station with a very basic island platform. Quincy Adams has a very similar design to Quincy Center, and while this station feels like it's below ground, it's actually elevated, which you can see if you go to the far inbound end of the platform. The platforms and solitary commuter rail track are tucked away behind large, gloomy parking garage, which features 6 levels of parking, as well as surrounding surface lots. And so that leads us to our final stop at Braintree Station, the southernmost point on the MBTA subway network, 10 miles south of Park Street. And so, as always, thank you to all the people who watched this video and who are supporting the channel. We really appreciate it, and huge thanks again, and I'll see you around.